Good morning, class. I am Priyanka. We are here for another class of science. In previous class, we have started chapter number 3, nature of matter, and we have studied till constitution of matter. So it is a continuation class. Please be ready with your notes, notebook, and a pen. Be ready to note down the things. Let's start the class. Okay. So what we are going to study today. First of all, we are going to recapitulate what all we have studied in our last class. After that, we'll talk about properties of matter. In properties of matter, we'll study about appearances and feel, transparency, floating and sinking, and diffusion. We'll talk about it one by one and see what all these sums up to. Okay, so let's come to recapitulation. So what have we started in our chapter is, first of all, we have seen that there are various materials around us. They have various different properties. They are different from each other in size, shape, color, odor, and physical state. So we have seen that on the basis of occurrence, whether they occur naturally or they are man-made, we have divided the materials into two categories, that is natural materials and synthetic materials. Correct? Natural materials were which were occurs in nature, which were found in nature, and synthetic material or man-made materials are those which are made up by human beings. Then we have come to the term classification. What does the term classification means? It means grouping of materials having similar properties, known as classification. So grouping of some materials which have similar properties is known as classification. Then we have talked about matter. What is matter? We have talked about that matter is everything that is around us which has a specific mass and which occupies space. Everything that has a specific mass and occupies any space is known as matter. Then we have seen some states of matter on the basis of physical states only. I have talked about properties, that we need a property to divide materials. Here the property we are using is physical state. On the basis of physical states, matters are divided into three broad categories: solids, liquids, and gas. Then we have talked about constitution of these three matters, means what are the parameters which divides these matter, which differentiate among these three matters. So we have talked about that in solid matters, particles of matters are very closely packed, they do not move at all, they have a very tight hold on each other. Solids have a fixed shape and fixed volume. Then we have talked about liquids, how particles in liquid state are closely packed but not too tightly packed. They have a hold on each other which is not too tight, not too loose. They can move. And we have seen that liquids have no definite shape but have specific volume, have definite volume. Then we have lastly talked about gases, how particles in gases are very loosely packed and they can move freely. Then we have seen that gases have no specific shape and no volume. They take up all the space that of the container that they are put into. That was all about our previous class. We have studied about these points. Now in today's class, we'll start with, be divided among these. So first properties, appearance and feel. When I say appearance, it means whether the material I am talking about is lustral, means shiny, or dull, means non-shiny. In simple words, shiny or non-shiny, or you can say lustrous or dull. That is what meant to be appearance of a material. Then when I say feel of a material, it means whether the material is smooth or rough. In feeling, when I feel the material, when I touch the material, how does it feel like, whether it was smooth or it was rough, it refers to the feel of material. So those are the two properties, appearance and feel, on the basis of which I can categorize different materials. Correct? Okay. So on that note, Let's see a video regarding appearance and feel of matter. Okay.
Properties of materials. Appearance. Materials like gold, silver, copper shine on exposing to light. Thus, it is called luster. Materials like glass, wood, stone do not shine on exposing to light. Such materials are called non-lustrous or dull materials.
Some materials do not shine. So we have seen in the video that some material do not shine when light fall on them, whereas some materials do shine when light falls on them. For example, various metals, silver, gold, glass, these are the materials which shine when light falls on it. So these are lustrous material, whereas some materials like coal, cemented road, or you can say our pillowcase, they do not shine when light falls upon them. So we can say these are dull materials. Another property we have talked about is feel of the material, that is whether they were smooth or rough. Let's understand it in a more better way. Feel of the material. Okay, so I have an activity for you. Please take out your pen and notebooks and write it down. Please note it down. Here, activity number 1. This activity is for you. Make this table in your notebook. As you can see, I have noted down 5 things: polished marble, sandpaper, glass table, cemented road and face cream. You have to differentiate whether the materials, whether the things I have noted down are smooth or rough and lustrous or dull. For example, I will do the first one, you will do the rest of the 4. Note them down please. I am giving you 5 minutes. For example, polished marble. Polished marble, what do you think will be smooth or rough? Polished marble. Here we have to focus on the word polished. The marble is polished, means it would be smooth. That is why the term polished is used here. Then lustrous and dull. If the marble is polished, your home marble, your home floor, when it was very polished, it shines, so it is lustrous. That is how you have to do the other 4. You have to categorize whether sandpaper will come under smooth or rough, then whether it will come under lustrous or dull. This way you will complete this table. Note that down. Note them roughly, you can write them fairly afterwards. Okay, note them down roughly on a paper or your rough notebook, then you can write it down fairly in your notebooks. Okay, write polished marble, sandpaper, glass table, cemented road and face cream. 5 materials. Okay, let's move ahead. Next property that we are going to use for categorizing materials is transparency. Okay, what does the term transparency means? Transparency is basically the property of a material to allow light to pass through it. If I can see if I can see through an object or a material, I say it is a transparent material. Correct? So if the light is passing through that material, it is transparent material. So the property of that material to allow light to pass through it known as transparency. More the amount of light is passing through is more the transparency of the material. Correct? So it is the property of a material to allow light to pass through it. It means one can see through a transparent material. As I say, if I can see through a material, I say it is a transparent material. For example, glass. A glass wall, many of you have seen a glass wall, or in the car, you see the windows of the car. I can see through the glass window, and the other person standing outside of the car can also see through the glass window. So I can say the glass is a transparent material because I can see through it. Another example is thin sheet of plastic, a very thin sheet of polythene or plastic. I can see through it also. So it is also an example of transparent material. But then what about those material which do not allow light to pass through them? It is not necessary that that I can see through every material. It is not possible. I can't see through my cemented wall. We have various walls in our house. I can't see through it. So what are those materials called? Well, these materials which do not allow light to pass through them are called opaque materials. For example, wood, cemented wall, your pillow, or a thick plastic sheet, they can be example of opaque materials which do not allow light to pass through them, or you can say through which you cannot see through. Correct? Okay. You can note that down, the definition of transparent materials and opaque materials. The materials which allow light to pass through them are called transparent material, and the materials which do not allow light to pass through them are called opaque materials. Noted? Very simple and short definition of transparent material and opaque materials. Okay. Let's see an interesting video related to it. Transparency of.
Ashish's father took him to an ice cream parlor one day. He asked Ashish to choose a flavor. Ashish decided to take a look. The ice creams were placed in a refrigerator with glass tops. Ashish could very easily choose a flavor without any assistance from the person at the counter. Can you say why? Since the refrigerator had glass tops and glass is transparent, Ashish could look at all the flavors that were available in the parlor and make his selection. A transparent substance is a substance that allows all light to pass through it. In other words, it absorbs light, reflecting back very little. As a result, it appears clear and things can be seen through it. Other examples of transparent substances are water, air, plastic, etc.
Clear? So in the video, also they have talked about how a material which I can see through are transparent material like glass. You have seen in various places the use of glass, and the materials which do not allow light to pass through them are opaque materials. So I have another activity for you to do, a very simple activity. Activity number 2. I have listed down 5 things here. You can see that wall, a cemented wall, it will be transparent, opaque. Can you see through? To be specific, wooden table. Can you see through a wooden table? If the answer is yes, then it is transparent. If it's no, then opaque. Another is clean water. Can you see through clean water? And your answer will be on the basis of your answer yes or no. Then air around us, can we see through the air? And last is towel. Can we see through the towel? Yes or no. Then on the basis of it, transparent or opaque. Very simple activity. Note the table down in your notebooks. Write them roughly on your rough notebook. You can write it fairly afterwards. Transparent or opaque. Let me make you understand by answering one example of it. I'll do with the towel. Okay, not always start with the top. Towel. Can I see through a towel? Well, I can't see through a towel. When I open up the towel in front of me, I cannot see through it. So for me, towel will come under opaque material because I cannot see through it. Light cannot pass through the towel. So it is a opaque material. Same you have to do the other 4. Okay. Okay. Let's move ahead. Another property apart from our appearances, feel and transparency that we have just talked about, another property of matter is floating or sinking. We all know what floating means. Floating means to float on water. There are various materials around us. Some of the materials float on water, whereas some will sink in it. So how can we decide whether a material will float on water or not? How can I say that yes, this material will float on water and this material will sink in water? How can I decide that? What are the parameters for it? Well, to say it simply, the materials which are lighter than water will float on water. The materials, I repeat, which are lighter than water will float on water. Lighter than water, they will float on water. And the materials which are heavier than water, they will sink in it. Correct? So I have written down some materials for you. We'll do our
Anyway, today we will learn about floating and sinking.
Okay. Let's see the video.
Hello friends! Seems my voice has changed a bit due to the cold. Anyway, today we will learn about floating and sinking. Have you ever wondered why some things float and some things sink? Let's learn about floating and sinking today. What causes some things to float and some to sink? Well, it's all about something we call density. Haha, don't worry. Let me explain this. Everything around us is made up of small molecules. And
Here the term small molecules means the particles that we were talking about, that everything around us, every matter we see around us is made up of some particles, or we can say molecules, correct?
some objects, tiny little objects called molecules, are tightly packed together. And in others, they are loosely packed together.
Okay. Now he is saying that in some materials the particles or the molecules are tightly packed, and in some another material the particles are loosely packed. Can you guess the materials? We have done it in previous class. I am sure you all are guessing it correctly. The tightly packed molecule or the object should be a solid object, and loosely packed molecule should be a liquid object. Correct.
This is actually what density means. The objects that are tightly packed together have a higher density, and the more loosely packed objects aren't that dense. Whatever objects sink,
In simple words, it means the object which have tightly packed molecules is heavy in weight. So it will basically sink in water, and the object which have loosely packed particles, they have a tendency to float on water because it has light weight.
are more dense. See the stone? These marbles? And yes, these coins. They all sink in water because the molecules are jam-packed in these. Similarly,
You have seen things here like stone and coin. These are very heavy, that is heavier than water, so they will sink in water. Next, he is using some materials like ball. Now ball is very light in weight, not the one of leather ball but of plastic ball. It is very light weighted. Weight is very less than water, so it will naturally float on water. Another thing he is using is a plastic bottle, an empty plastic bottle, not filled with water or cold drink or something, an empty bottle, plastic bottle. It will sink on water because it is light weighted than water. Next thing he is using is a inflated balloon, a balloon which is filled up with air. It is also light weighted than water, so it will also float on it. Correct? So I'm sure you all have understood why we say that the things which are heavier than water will sink in it, and the materials which are lighter than water will float on it. Okay, so let's come to the activity which I was talking about, activity number 3. Note it down, please. Start noting it down. Here also I have written some things, listed down some things which you have to categorize whether they were floating, whether they will float in water or they will sink in water. I have written down ice pieces. You can also do this activity in your home. It is a very simple activity. Fill up a bucket with water, half of the bucket of water, then try to put all these things in it, and you can see whether they will float or sink. On the basis of it, you can write your answers down. It is a very simple activity. All of you can do it at your home. Correct. First is ice pieces. Try to add ice pieces to your bucket filled with water and see whether they will float or sink. Next is pebbles. Then we have feather. Fourth one is iron nail. Fifth is your butter paper. Seventh is bottle cap, and last is your coin. Try to put them in a bucket filled with water and see what happens, whether they float or they sink in the water. And on the basis of what you are seeing, what you are observing, write your answers here. Clear? So note it down. I'm sure you all have noted it down. Okay, so let's come to the last topic of today's class, which is another property of matter, diffusion. Okay, what does the term diffusion means? The word fusion means mixing of two things. Fusion means mixing. Correct. So what diffusion here means, diffusion is property of mixing of particles of two materials. We take two materials and the particles of it can mix together. So the property is known as diffusion. It is the property of mixing of particles of two materials. And how can it happen? Why will two materials will diffuse together, or you can say mix together, and how can they do that? Obviously it happens due to free movement of particles. When particles are freely moving, that means they have a little hold on each other, then they have spaces between them and they can adjust another particle of another material between its two particles, so they will diffuse together. Correct. So it means more the free movement of particles in a material, more the diffusion will be. Correct. You understand what I am trying to say? How will we understand this material will diffuse or not? If the material have loosely packed or freely movement of particle, it will diffuse. If a material have tightly packed particles, it will not diffuse. So can you guess which matter among the three, solids, liquid and gases, have more freely moving particle in it? Which of the three have freely moving particle which have very little hold on each other? I'm sure you all are guessing it correctly. Gases. Gases are the matter among the three that we have studied, solid, liquids and gases. Gases are the one which have the particles which have very little hold on each other. They have free movement of particles. So gases can diffuse very fastly, very quickly to each other. Means two or more gases can diffuse, they can mix very quickly in comparison to liquids and solids, because gases have freely moving particles. Okay, let's take a very simple example. In the morning when your mother showers and go to the temple or go to your house temple for the puja, she lights up agarbatti and you are sitting in another room. As soon as she lights the agarbatti, within 5 or 10 seconds you start smelling the odor of that agarbatti. How does it happen? She was lighting it in another room and you are sitting in another room. So how does the smell of that agarbatti goes to your nose? The answer is because the smell of the agarbatti is diffused in the air around you, which is also a gas. So two gases, the one coming from your agarbatti and the another one which is around you, that is air, they diffuses with each other very quickly and the smell of agarbatti comes very fastly to your nose. Correct. So that is how we can say that gases diffuses very quickly to each other. After gases, if I remove gas from it and we have two things left with us, solid and liquids, among these two, which have particles which can freely move only between liquid and solid? You are again guessing it correctly, liquids. As compared to solids, liquids have more freely moving particles. So liquids can also diffuse with each other, but not so much quickly as gases were doing it, but quite slowly. Correct. So gases diffuses very quickly to each other, liquids also diffuses but quite slowly as compared to gases. One of the best example of it, you can do it in your home also. Take a glass of water and put 2 drops of ink in it, a blue ink or whatever color you want. Put 2 drops of ink in it and wait for some time. You will see in some time the ink will dissolve it will diffuse in the water. Ink is also a liquid and water is also a liquid. They both will diffuse to each other and in some time the whole water will look like blue color. Correct. So it means the ink and the water has been diffused, but it does not diffuse as fast as the gases, but it does diffuse quite slowly. Correct. Next we have left with solids only. We have talked about gases, we have talked about liquids. Another thing left is solids. Solids do not diffuses at all. The reason behind it, can you guess why is it so? I'm sure you all know the answer of it. solids do not diffuses because solids have very tight hold on the each other. The particles of solid have very tight hold of each other. They cannot move freely. This is the reason that solids cannot diffuse with each other. But they cannot diffuse with each other because the particles do not have space between them. But it doesn't mean that solids cannot diffuse with another matter. Correct? Liquids have spaces between their particles. So a solid can slowly diffuse into liquids. The reason is because liquids have spaces between their particles. So solids can diffuse slowly into liquids. Correct? An example of it is, take a salt crystal. Okay, we all have seen crystallized salt. You must have that in your home also. Ask your mother for the guidance. She will tell you about crystallized salt. Take a sample of crystallized salt, common salt, and take a glass of water. Put the crystallized salt, which is a solid by the way, and water is a liquid. Put it in the glass of water and wait for 5 to 10 minutes. After 5 to 10 minutes, you will see that the salt is being diffused in the water, making the glass of water salty in taste, which means the solid crystallized salt that you have added in the glass of water now has been diffused into the water, making the water salty. So it clarifies our last point that solids can diffuse into liquids, but very slowly. Clear? That is all about our diffusion. You can write down the definition of diffusion here. Diffusion is property of mixing of particles of two materials, and it happens due to free movement of particle. More the particles will be free, higher is the rate of diffusion will be. Correct? Write down the definition. Diffusion is property of mixing of particles of two materials. It happens due to free movement of particles. Noted? Okay. Okay, that was the last topic of today's class. I am sure you all have done the assignments that I have given to you in previous class. Okay. Next is, for today you have some work to do. First is complete the tables given in the previous slide. Okay. I have given you 3 tables here to do. First was of the things which you have to categorize into smooth, rough and lustrous or dull. This is the table I am talking about. You have to complete this table. Heading is activity number 1. Correct? Then you have table number 2 in activity number 2, where you have to categorize the things as transparent or opaque. That was your table number 2. Then I have given you last table, table number 3 in activity number 3, which is to categorize things into floating materials or sinking materials. Correct? These are the 3 tables that you have to complete. Okay? You have noted that down in your rough registers. Okay? Note them down fairly in your notebooks and then do the tables. Correct? Next is, you have to complete the assignment given below. It is the link of the assignment that you have to complete. I will forward the link and the table to your Snap Homework app. You can also get them from here, so do not get worried about the link. As soon as you will click on the link, a page will get open. here, let me show you. As soon as you will click on the link like this, a page will open. This is your assignment. You have to answer the questions given. Just for example, your book is made up of matter because you have 4 options here. Whatever the answer you deem that it is correct, you can click on front of it. It will choose the answer, correct, whatever you think is the correct one. Another is also like that. Then you have to write your name and roll number. Roll number is of your previous class, whatever it is. Next question, differentiate matter on the basis of appearance, correct. Then what are transparent materials? Give 3 examples. What are opaque material? Give 3 examples. And what do you understand by transparency of a material? As soon as you have answered all these questions here, click on the button submit and the assignment will be submitted to me, correct. That is what you have to do. So that is your home assignment for today, and that is the class for today. Okay, we'll see each other in another class. If you have any doubts, you can live chat with me in 1 minute. After 1 minute you can ask your doubts. I will try my best to answer all of your doubts clearly. So write your doubts on live chat, and we'll see each other on another class with nature of matter. Okay class, good morning and bye bye to you all. Stay healthy, stay safe and study hard.